I'm 65, and these days I tend to avoid people, not out of resentment. Not because I've thrown in the towel, but because somewhere along the line I came to understand something most folks don't face until it's too late. There arrives a moment when you stop running after everyone and begin picking yourself instead, and at this age, picking myself feels less like a treat and more like a necessity. For the bulk of my life, I was the one constantly saying yes. Yes to family get-togethers. Yes to favors asked at the last minute. Yes to conversations I simply didn't have the energy for. I used to believe that made me reliable, but as I've gotten older, I've realized it made me vanish. There's a gentle shift that happens around this time of life. You start to feel time not just passing, but shrinking. It becomes less about tracking years and more about weighing meaning. Each day feels a bit more precious, like you're spending something you'll never get back. And that's when I began saying no. Time isn't something I take lightly anymore. When I was younger, I'd let hours slip away chatting with people who never truly listened or running errands for those who wouldn't return the favor. Now I cherish the quiet. A calm morning with a warm cup feels more precious than a busy afternoon packed with chit-chat. It's not about being unfriendly, it's about being purposeful. Time teaches you what genuinely matters. And even more painfully, who genuinely matters. I don't have the energy to keep up every relationship I once did. And honestly, not everyone deserves that energy. When I think about where I want my hours spent, it's toward calm, not acting. There's something lovely about pruning your social circle, releasing those who take but never offer, letting go of the need to be all things to all people. My world has gotten smaller, yes, but it's also gotten sharper. You begin to notice who reaches out without wanting something, who listens without waiting for their turn to speak, who recalls your stories, not just your faults. And those are the ones you hold on to. I've had friendships fade and family bonds loosen. At first, I tried to mend things. I pursued, I over-explained, I tried to keep everything from falling apart. But eventually I recognized that if someone doesn't notice your absence, they never truly valued your presence. So now I don't defend myself, I don't explain why I missed a call or skipped a reunion, I simply choose calm. And in doing that, I've gained something no apology or excuse ever gave me: freedom. It's odd how people react when you start drawing boundaries later in life. Some assume you're upset, others think you've turned sour, but really, it's the reverse. I'm finally at ease because I've stopped pretending everything is fine. I no longer put up with conversations that deplete me, demands that wear me out, or company that leaves me feeling more alone than solitude does. And speaking of solitude, there was a time I dreaded it. The quiet, the open calendar, the evenings with no plans. But what I've learned is that there's deep richness in being by yourself, not lonely, alone. Solitude has become precious. It's where I think, recharge, and reconnect with who I am. No need to perform, no masks, no forced chatter. Just me as I am, with all the wear and wisdom life has given me. I've learned to enjoy my own company, to sit with my thoughts instead of fleeing from them, to find joy in small things, a good meal, a familiar book, a walk without a destination. These little pleasures feel deeper than any party I ever went to. Relationships look different now, too. I used to think love meant putting up with things, that if you cared for someone, you stayed even when it hurt. But now I see that real love doesn't drain you. It doesn't make you feel smaller. So I've released some long-standing relationships, not out of anger, but out of acceptance. Not everyone grows in the same direction, and holding on out of guilt only slows you down. Some people belong in your story, but not in every chapter. I've also stopped waiting for people to change. That was a hard one. I used to think if I just loved harder, waited longer, forgave more, they'd come around. They rarely did, and each time I lost a bit more of myself trying to help someone who wouldn't meet me partway. Now I accept people as they are, but I also decide whether who they are fits into my life. It's not judgment, it's discernment. This age has taught me to be my own guardian, to protect my peace the way I once protected my image, to nurture my spirit the way I once nurtured everyone else. It's a quiet strength, the kind that says, I love you, but I love me too. I've also noticed the world feels different now, faster, louder, more disconnected despite all the connection. And I find myself wanting something slower, more grounded. I miss the simplicity of human interaction before it got filtered through screens and alerts. These days, I seek meaningful connection. I don't need dozens of friends or endless invites. I need honesty, warmth, and depth. I want talks that feed the soul, not ones that skim the top. I avoid people who bring chaos, who stir up conflict, who never ask how you're doing but expect you to listen forever. I avoid people who gossip more than they grow, who complain more than they contribute. Instead, I stay close to those who are kind without an agenda, who laugh easily, who say I'm here, and truly mean it. Those are the people worth keeping, and the rest, I wish them well from afar. It's not always simple. Some days that old guilt creeps back, days when I wonder if I'm too shut off, too guarded. But then I remember what it felt like to be surrounded by people and still feel invisible. That's lonelier than being alone. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. If you're 65, 70, or even older, and you've been feeling this change too, know that it's not just you. Many of us are waking up to the truth that life's too short for anything less than real. You're allowed to grow out of relationships. You're allowed to choose rest over show. You're allowed to put your well-being first. You're allowed to be at peace. And if that means avoiding people who pull you away from your center, so be it. You've earned the right to be picky. You've lived enough to understand what counts. You don't owe anyone access to your time, your energy, or your heart just because they ask. This is your time now. Spend it wisely. As the years roll on, I've come to see that picking peace over people isn't a lonely act. It's a freeing one. There's a strange sort of clarity that arrives once you realize your time is more valuable than your reputation. I used to worry a lot about what others thought of me, whether I was polite enough, present enough, helpful enough. But now I ask a different question. Was I kind to myself? That one shift changed everything. I no longer show up to events out of duty. I no longer answer calls from people who only get in touch when they want something. I no longer justify my boundaries or say sorry for them. At this stage of life, I've found that the most meaningful relationships don't need constant proof or performance. They just exist like a quiet undercurrent of trust. These days, I value presence over performance. I'd rather sit in silence with someone who truly sees me than entertain a room full of people who never ask how I'm really doing. That's not isolation, that's discernment, and it's something that only comes with age. When I was in my 40s and 50s, I thought relationships were like houses. If they had cracks, you patched them. You kept repairing until the place felt whole again. But now, I understand that some structures weren't built on solid ground from the start, and holding them up becomes a full-time job you never signed up for. Letting go of people, even people you once loved deeply, is one of the hardest and most freeing things you'll ever do. You don't do it with anger, you do it with acceptance. Some people are meant to teach you, not stay with you. And that's not failure, that's life. I've stopped clinging to what was and started embracing what is. And what is quieter, simpler, but endlessly more peaceful. There are people I used to talk to every day who are now strangers. And yet I don't feel a hole where they used to be. I feel a space, room to breathe. It's not emptiness. It's openness. Space I can fill with walks under the trees, slow mornings, books I never finished, and thoughts I never had time to think. One thing no one tells you about getting older is how much clearer people's intentions become. Maybe it's experience, maybe it's instinct, but you start to notice the tone in someone's voice, the look in their eyes when they ask for something. You notice the silence that follows when you're the one in need, and you learn to stop chasing people who never once took a step toward you. I used to make excuses for those things. Oh, they're just busy. They didn't mean it like that. I gave out more benefit of the doubt than I gave myself time to breathe. But now I notice, I take note, and I make choices accordingly. I've swapped social gatherings for moments of meaning. A coffee with a true friend, a visit to my daughter's garden, a chat with my neighbor who waves every morning. Not out of habit, but out of genuine care. What surprises me most is how few people I actually need to feel fulfilled. A handful, that's all, and when I'm alone, I no longer feel like something's missing. In fact, I feel whole. Wholeness, I've learned, doesn't come from others completing you. It comes from stopping the constant effort to please everyone else and finally pleasing yourself. I've even changed how I spend my days. I don't fill them with busyness like I once did. I don't feel guilty for saying no to things. If anything, I've grown more curious about how little I can do and still feel content. That was never the goal in my younger years, but now it feels like the whole point. I've also made peace with the fact that I've outgrown some people that used to make me feel guilty. How could I leave behind someone I once shared everything with? But the truth is, growing doesn't always happen together. Sometimes it happens apart, and if you're growing and they're not, there's only so far you can walk side by side before the road splits. When it does, you have two choices: slow yourself down to stay in step, or let go and keep walking. I've chosen to keep walking. At this age, guilt gets lighter when you start carrying gratitude instead. Gratitude for the lessons, for the memories, for the growth. Even the painful endings become part of the gift because they make you more intentional about the relationships you still have. Some people are confused by this version of me, the quieter me, the one who picks the back row instead of the spotlight. The one who leaves a gathering early because she's tired of shallow talk and longs for her porch and a blanket. But this version of me is the most honest I've ever been. You see, I don't need to be liked by everyone anymore. I just want to be known by the right people, and that doesn't require loudness. It requires truth, quiet, steady soul, deep truth. I've stopped offering explanations to people who never listened. I've stopped defending myself to those who'd already made up their minds. I've stopped saying yes when every part of me whispered no. What remains is a life that finally feels like mine. I know some people fear this shift. They think stepping back means giving up. But what if it means waking up? Waking up to the reality that time is running out, and we no longer want to spend it playing roles we never tried out for. I don't want to be the version of me others need. I want to be the version of me I recognize when I look in the mirror. And that version, she needs less noise, fewer expectations, and more peace. I avoid people now because I've learned that not everyone is good for your soul. Some people make you doubt your worth. Others make you feel like you're not enough unless you're giving everything. And then there are those who drain you with their drama, their chaos, their endless need for attention. You don't need that, not at this stage, not ever. I've come to love people from a distance, to send kind thoughts instead of texts, to pray for their peace without welcoming their turmoil into mine. There is kindness in boundaries. There is love in letting go. I don't wish anyone harm. I simply wish myself peace. And that's a wish I now put first. I'm not lonely. I'm aligned. There's a stillness I've found in my days that I wouldn't trade for the most exciting party or the most flattering compliment. That stillness is made of mornings where I don't rush, afternoons where I nap without guilt, and evenings where I watch the sun disappear behind trees that have seen more seasons than I have. This is my season now, a season of clarity, of careful yeses and unapologetic nos. And if that means I'm harder to reach, so be it. I'm busy tending to the parts of me I neglected when I was too busy being everything for everyone else. If you're on this path too, let me say this, don't doubt it, don't pull back, don't apologize for the peace you've earned. You're not being selfish, you're being wise. This isn't about bitterness, it's about boundaries. It's not about pushing people away. It's about drawing yourself close. It's not about giving up on connection. It's about connecting differently. And most of all, it's about finally realizing that a full life doesn't need a full room. It just needs a full heart. So yes, I avoid people now, because I choose peace over noise, presence over performance, and myself, finally myself, over the endless chase for approval. I hope you'll do the same, and if you've stayed with me all the way to this point, maybe you've felt it too. That quiet nudge to choose a life that feels softer, truer, lighter, one where your days belong to you and your heart feels like home. You're not alone in that feeling, not by a long shot. So take this as your permission slip to rest, to retreat, to refill your spirit, and maybe, just maybe, to sit in silence long enough to remember how beautiful your own company really is. If that sounds like the kind of wisdom you're ready to live by, stick around and subscribe. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? We've built a quiet little village here. No loud parties, no exhausting performances, just truth, peace, and stories that remind you you're never too old to start choosing.